Dare Olatunji was halfway through reviewing quarterly sales numbers for Zara Styles, the fashion brand he co-founded with his wife, when his phone buzzed violently on his desk. The caller ID made his stomach drop. Type school. He snatched up the phone immediately. Hello? Dare speaking. The voice on the other end was panicked. Sir, this is Hope from Royal Ivy School. Your wife, Madam Amaka, she's been hit by a bus just outside the school gate. It's bad, sir. They've rushed her to Aladil Memorial Hospital. Welcome to Moonlit Stories, where moonlight meets myth. Love timeless tales? Then hit like, subscribe, and join the circle. Every story begins with you. Everything else went silent. The room, the office, even his breathing. For a split second, time stopped. What? He whispered, already rising to his feet, knocking over his chair. I'm coming. He didn't bother grabbing his suit jacket. He rushed past the secretary without a word, burst into the elevator, and drove like a man possessed. Lagos traffic blurred past him. Hawkers, Okadas, and horns became noise he couldn't register. His mind flashed with a mockus laugh. Her gentle voice, the way she always ironed his clothes just the way he liked, even when she was tired. His partner, the mother of his girls. Please let her be okay, he murmured as he turned into the hospital's emergency entrance. Inside, nurses pointed him to the waiting area. His 12-year-old daughter, Tommy, ran to him from the corridor, sobbing, clutching her younger sister, Taif, who was trembling and wide-eyed. Dare wrapped them both in his arms, swallowing his fear. It's okay, I'm here, he whispered, moored himself into them. Mummy will be fine. He called his younger brother to come and take the girls home. Then he sat, cold, stiff, helpless, waiting. Minutes crawled by like hours until a doctor appeared in blue scrubs, his face a mixture of fatigue and concern. Mr. Olatunji? Yes. Please, how is my wife? She survived, the doctor said carefully. But it's serious. Her spine absorbed a severe shock. Both legs are fractured in multiple places. She's stable now, but the road to recovery will be long, very long. Dare's legs gave way beneath him, and he collapsed into the chair behind. Can I see her? She's sedated, but yes, just for a few minutes. He stepped into the ICU room and froze. Machines beeped softly. Amaka lay motionless, her glowing brown skin now pale, lips dry, hair disheveled. She looked nothing like the woman he had kissed goodbye that morning before school drop-off. He moved closer, sat gently beside her, and took her hand. I'm here, he whispered, tears gathering in his eyes. You're gonna be okay. Amaka, I promise we'll get through this. Together. But deep down, he didn't yet know that the accident would not only break her body, it would break everything. The following days at Aladil Memorial Hospital were a blur of surgeries, hospital meals, and whispered prayers. Amaka went through 3 complex orthopedic operations, each one more delicate than the last. Dare barely slept. He was there for all of it, signing consent forms, pacing the corridors, asking endless questions. The once confident fashion entrepreneur now looked like a shadow of himself. His eyes remained red and weary. He had stopped shaving. The man who used to command boardrooms now spent his nights sitting beside a hospital bed, brushing his wife's hair back gently, whispering reassurances she couldn't hear. When Amaka finally opened her eyes, she was confused and disoriented. The nurses told her what happened. Dare told her the rest. Her voice trembled when she whispered, I can't feel my legs. It's a swelling around your spine, Dare said, forcing a calmness he didn't feel. The doctors say there's hope. Therapy, rehab, they'll help. She nodded quietly. No tears, no drama. Just a quiet acceptance, the kind that masked deeper pain. A few weeks later, she was discharged, but in a wheelchair. Their house in Ogudu GRA, once filled with laughter and sense of Amaka's cooking, now felt like a hospital annex. Dare moved their bedroom downstairs and set up a temporary hospital bed beside hers. He bought new orthopedic supplies, had ramps installed, and learned how to bathe her, dress her, feed her when her arms were too sore. For the first few weeks, he was her rock. He took leave from work, tucked in the girls at night, bathed Amaka in the mornings, even learned how to cook semi-decent okra soup. His family offered to help, but he refused. He didn't want anyone else touching her, not even out of kindness. Not after what happened 3 years ago with Funk. Their ex-house helped. Funk had seemed perfect, respectful, efficient, and loving toward the children. Until one day, Typh came crying to her mother about being yelled at for no reason. Then money started disappearing. Eventually, they caught Funk stealing food and acting inappropriately around their eldest daughter. It broke something in Amaka, and in Dare too. Since then, the thought of bringing another stranger into their home made his skin crawl. So Dare carried it all. He didn't complain. Not when his back ached. Not when Amaka couldn't sleep and woke him up at 2 a.m. for help to the bathroom. Not when the girls asked questions he didn't know how to answer. But the cracks were forming. One evening, after putting the girls to bed, Dare stood over the kitchen sink and stared at his reflection in the glass. His eyes were tired. His shoulders slumped. And the thought came uninvited. I didn't sign up for this. It was a fleeting thought, shameful and cruel, but it lodged itself somewhere deep. He washed his hands, turned off the light, and went back to Amaka's side, smiling, pretending, because that's what a good husband does. Even when his heart is quietly starting to drift. It was on a quiet Wednesday evening that Laura returned. Dare had just finished spoon-feeding Amaka a bowl of semo and egusi. The girls were curled on the couch watching cartoons, and the house smelled faintly of antiseptic and exhaustion. When the doorbell rang, it startled them all. Typh looked up. "Daddy, someone is at the door." Dare opened the door to find a familiar face. Laura Adebayo, Amaka's best friend since their university days. Her perfume hit first, subtle and floral. Her eyes, always sharp and observant, immediately scanned Dare's face before resting on Amaka. "Oh my God, Amaka," she whispered, stepping inside without waiting to be invited. She dropped her handbag, ran over, and fell to her knees beside the wheelchair. "I came as soon as I heard," she said, taking Amaka's hand. "I can't believe this happened to you." Amaka, weak but composed, gave a small smile. "I'm alive, Laura. That's what matters." Dare stood off to the side, watching. He knew Laura well, too well. She'd been part of their wedding committee, their kid's godmother, and once helped them scout for office space during the early days of Zara Styles. She was family, but something about her presence now felt heavy. Laura quickly inserted herself into their lives. She brought food, pepper soup one day, jollof rice the next. She cleaned Amaka's room, did the girls' hair, even organized their medication baskets. She visited almost every day after work, and sometimes stayed until bedtime. On weekends, she brought wine and gist, and made Amaka laugh the first time in weeks. At first, Dare was grateful. Laura gave him breathing room. She allowed him to nap, catch up on emails, even drive out to pick supplies without rushing back home. But as the days turned into weeks, he began to notice things. The way Laura looked at him when she thought no one was watching. How her hands lingered too long when passing a towel. The softness in her voice when she said, "You're doing so much, Dare." Most men would have run. He tried to dismiss it, chalk it up to sentiment, to old friendship. But he couldn't ignore the warmth he felt when she complimented him. The way his heart beat faster when they stood too close in the kitchen. The slow but undeniable shift in how they spoke to each other. Longer conversations, more eye contact, laughter that came too easily. One Saturday evening, Laura stayed behind after putting the girls to bed. Amaka had fallen asleep early. Dare stepped out the veranda to clear his mind and found Laura already there, swinging gently on the wooden bench. She looked up and smiled. "Rough day?" He nodded, standing beside her. "I feel like I've lost myself," he murmured. "I don't even know who I am anymore. Caregiver, house manager, therapist, but not a husband, not a man." Lara's voice was soft. "You're human, Dare, and you're doing your best." She reached out and touched his hand. He didn't pull away, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. It was wrong, but it also felt dangerously easy. From that night on, the air in the house changed. Dare still bathed Amaka. He still picked the girls from school. He still smiled when needed, but his soul had begun to drift. His body remained in the house, but his heart was now wandering, pulled by stolen glances, soft sighs, and the scent of Lara's perfume. Lara didn't stop coming. She came with fresh fruits, vitamins for Amaka, comic books for the girls, and warm words for Dare. She made everything easier, too easy. When Amaka needed help getting to the bathroom, Lara was there. When the food ran out, Lara stocked the fridge. She became Amaka's legs, Dare's breath, and the girl's second mother. But under the surface, something else was blooming. It started with the way she touched his shoulder when he was stressed. Then with late-night texts, "Hope today wasn't too hard, red heart," and "Thinking of you, you're stronger than you know." One evening, while Amaka napped, Lara leaned in and kissed Dare's cheek after they laughed about something minor. He didn't stop her. He hated himself for it, but he also craved it. That gentle affection, that feminine attention, that reminder that he wasn't invisible. Amaka noticed. She never said a word, not at first, but her eyes followed him more than her voice did. She saw how his forehead kisses became quick and mechanical, how his hands stopped lingering, how his responses shortened from "I love you, baby" to "okay" or "sleep well." One night, after Lara left, Amaka sat in her wheelchair by the window, her hands folded across her lap. Her voice was quiet, barely above a whisper. "Dare, do you still love me?" He looked at her, truly looked, for the first time in weeks. The woman before him had lost weight. Her skin was dull, and the light in her eyes had dimmed. But she was still Amaka, still the woman who had sacrificed her banking career to help him build Zara Styles, still the mother of his children, the woman who gave him her everything. He forced a smile. "Of course I do," but the words tasted like sawdust in his mouth. And Amaka knew. She said nothing more. She just looked away, out the window, toward the dark sky. In that silence, a part of her heart folded in on itself. That night, Dare slept in the guest room, for no reason he could explain. And from then on, that room became his. Lara's visits increased. So did their private talks. And then came the night when Dare broke. It was raining. He was seated on the porch, head in his hands, shoulders heavy with guilt and confusion. Lara sat beside him, her voice gentle. "You're doing so much, but who's taking care of you?" That sentence shattered the last of his restraint. He cried, ugly, guttural sobs. And Lara held him. Then she kissed him. He kissed her back. The betrayal had begun, not with fire, but with soft hands and silence. 3 months passed. By now, Dare and Lara's affair had become an unspoken truth, silent but present in every room. The guilt Dare once carried had dulled into numbness. He still bathed Amaka, still picked up groceries, still played the role of father, but there was no warmth in it. Just duty, routine, escape. Amaka felt it all. Every time he left the house when Lara was around. Every time he smiled more easily with her than with his own wife. Every time Lara's laughter echoed from the kitchen while she sat in silence by the window, her legs refusing to obey her, her voice catching in her throat. The worst part wasn't even the affair. Asia. Dare no longer saw her, not truly. He spoke to her like she was another task, kissed her forehead like she was a patient, not a partner. She had become invisible in her own marriage, a ghost in the home she helped build. That ghost began to break. She cried sometimes at night, muffling the sound so the girls wouldn't hear. Some days, she asked him plainly, "Do you need help with something?" just so he would look at her. Other days, she simply watched him, quietly, painfully, watching her husband fall in love with someone else, her best friend, and pretend it wasn't happening. The girls sensed it too. Tommy had become quiet, withdrawn. Typh, only 7, started wetting the bed again. Amaka noticed everything, but she was too tired to fix it, too tired to fight for a man who no longer fought for her. One night, after Dare had returned from a quick business meeting that stretched until almost midnight, Amaka was waiting in the living room, the wheelchair's wheels locked in place, her face blank. "Dare," she said calmly, "I'm not stupid." He froze in the doorway, the rain dripping from his coat. He looked at her, truly looked, and for a brief second, he saw her, not the weak woman in the chair, but Amaka, the one who had once built an empire beside him. Nurse's ego, when clients belittled him, defended him to his own family. But that second passed. "I don't know what you mean," he muttered. "You don't have to lie," she said. Her voice didn't tremble. "Just be honest with yourself. You've already left. You just haven't packed your bag yet." Dare looked away. His chest tightened. Shame warred with resentment. And instead of apologizing, he mumbled, "I'm tired, Amaka," and walked past her into the guest room. The door clicked shut, and Amaka sat alone in the dark, her hands gripping the arms of her wheelchair, eyes stinging. The house no longer felt like home. It felt like a place where love had once lived. Now, it was just a house with no air. It was early morning when Dare made his final decision. The guest room was dimly lit. He sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the suitcase he had packed the night before. Just one. No explanation for the girls. No goodbye to Amaka. Just a note, scrawled in blue pen, folded neatly and placed on the center table. The silence in the house was deafening. Outside, Laura waited at the end of the street in a silver Corolla, sunglasses on, hair neatly packed, engine running. She didn't call or text. She knew he would come. Inside, Dare walked past the living room without looking at the woman in the wheelchair. She was asleep, head tilted gently, a scarf covering her braided hair, her hands folded neatly on her lap. Still, beautiful, broken. He paused at the doorway, a flicker of hesitation. Then, just like that, he stepped out. He didn't look back. Amaka woke 2 hours later to the silence. No smell of breakfast. No humming from the kitchen. The house felt abandoned. She wheeled herself into the living room and saw the note. "Amaka, I can't do this anymore. I've tried. I've failed. I've lost myself. Laura and I are starting over. I've sold Zara Styles. Don't look for me. I hope one day you understand." Dare. Her hands trembled. Her throat dried. She tried to read it again, but the words blurred. And then it hit. A scream broke from her chest. Wild, animalistic. It was a kind of sound that had no shape, just pain. Deep, gut-wrenching pain. She threw the note across the room, knocking over a lamp. The crash startled Tommy and Typh, who ran out of their rooms, their small feet padding across the tile floor. They stopped on the stairs, frozen. "Mummy?" Tommy called out, voice trembling. Amaka looked at them, her face streaked with tears, her chest rising and falling rapidly. "He left," she choked out. "He left us." The girls didn't understand everything, but they understood heartbreak. They ran into her arms, sobbing as she held them tight, the three of them trembling together in a broken embrace. That night, Amaka called her sister Chioma in Canada. She could barely get the words out between sobs. But Chioma didn't need details. Her voice on the other end was firm. "You are not alone. Amaka, I swear on my life, I will not let you break. We're going to rise. You hear me? We are going to rise." And just like that, the healing began, not because Amaka felt ready, but because she had nothing left to lose. 2 days after the call, Chioma's support arrived in full force. First, it was Nurse Remy, a licensed caregiver hired from a private clinic in Lekki. She showed up in navy scrubs with a quiet strength in her eyes and a medical bag in hand. Her job was clear: monitor Amaka's vitals, manage her medication, assist with hygiene, and offer steady companionship. The next morning, Madame Reese, a retired caterer-turned-home cook, arrived. She was plump, motherly, and immediately took over the kitchen. She brought warmth back into the house, boiling ogbono soup, mopping floors, humming old Yoruba gospel songs while braiding the girls' hair. For the first time in weeks, the house smelled like home again. But Amaka, she was sinking. Her body was healing. Slowly, but her spirit had withered. She barely ate, rarely spoke. Her face was drawn and pale. She refused to leave the wheelchair, even when Nurse Remy encouraged her to do simple stretches. The light in her eyes had dulled. One afternoon, as Nurse Remy checked her blood pressure, Amaka whispered, almost too softly to hear, "Maybe it would have been better if I didn't survive that accident. Remy froze mid-motion. Please don't say that, madam. There's nothing left for me here, Amaka murmured. No husband, no marriage, no business, nothing. And then her eyes rolled back. Remy acted fast, catching her before she could slump sideways. Her skin was clammy. Her pulse was faint. The nurse called for an ambulance immediately. Amaka was rushed to Gracefield Specialist Hospital. Diagnosis: severe dehydration, physical exhaustion, clinical depression. She was placed on 4 fluids and sedated for observation. Nurse Remy stayed by her side throughout the night, pacing and whispering prayers. The girls were left in the care of Madame Reese, who kept them comforted with stories and hot umla. When Amaka opened her eyes the next morning, it wasn't the hospital machine she noticed first. It was a stranger seated beside her bed, a well-dressed man in his mid-50s. Calm, composed, a gentle sadness in his eyes. "May I?" he asked softly, pointing to the chair beside her. She blinked, confused and groggy, but nodded weakly. "My name is Chief Tun Babalola," he said. "I didn't mean to overhear, but your pain, it reminded me of mine. I lost my wife 6 years ago. Cancer. It nearly killed me too." Amaka stared at him, uncertain. "But someone showed up for me when I had no one," he said. "Maybe it's time I do the same for someone else." That was the first time Amaka didn't cry when someone offered help, not out of pride, but out of the faint, flickering hope that maybe not everyone who comes close is there to take something. Chief Tun Babalola didn't leave Amaka's side for the rest of that week. Each morning, he arrived in a clean gray kaftan, his calm voice filling the sterile hospital room like sunlight through a dusty window. He never pushed her to speak. He simply showed up with fresh fruit for the girls, updates from Chioma in Canada, or a soft smile that didn't demand anything in return. The hospital staff began to whisper, calling him the quiet chief. But to Amaka, he was just Tund, the stranger who didn't look at her with pity or shame. One afternoon, Amaka finally found the strength to ask, "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Tund looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Because someone once told me that no act of kindness is wasted, and I believe people deserve to feel safe again." That night, Amaka wept, not from pain, but from the strange comfort of being seen. A week later, she was transferred to a private rehabilitation suite, arranged quietly and fully funded by Tun's foundation. Her girls visited daily, their faces brighter, their questions fewer. She began daily therapy, guided stretches, parallel bar exercises, hydrotherapy sessions. It wasn't easy. She cried through her first session. Her legs refused to move. Her balance was weak. But her therapist, a soft-spoken woman named Chisholm, gently reminded her, "Don't have to conquer today. Just show up, 1 inch at a time." Amaka did, day by day, 1 step at a time. By the end of her 2nd month, she was able to stand, wobbly, leaning on forearm crutches, but standing. The day she walked 5 unassisted steps across the therapy room, the staff clapped. Tun was there too, smiling proudly. Amaka turned to him, tears in her eyes. "I never thought I'd walk again." "You're not just walking," he said. "You're rising." After 3 months, her therapist cleared her to travel. Tun made arrangements immediately. With Chioma's help, Amaka and the girls were flown to Toronto for advanced care and to stay close to family. The journey was quiet, emotional. When they landed, Chioma was at the airport waiting, arms wide open. In the months that followed, Amaka slowly rebuilt her life. But something had changed deep within her. She no longer begged for love. She was no longer the woman waiting to be rescued. She was a survivor who had found her strength in the wreckage. And Chief Tund? He never stopped showing up. Not because she needed saving, but because, for once, a man had chosen to stay. 2 years passed. Amaka returned to Nigeria, stronger, calmer, and walking with forearm crutches. Not out of pity, but out of power. Her daughters, Tommy and Taif, were taller, more confident, and full of laughter. Their eyes no longer carried shadows. Life had blossomed again. She chose not to buy a new home. Instead, she moved back into the same house in Ogudu GRA, the house where her world once crumbled, not because she missed the memories, but because she refused to let Dare's betrayal define her address. The rooms had been repainted, curtains replaced. Madame Reese resumed her cooking and cleaning, filling the air with the scent of jollof rice and stew once more. Tommy and Typh re-enrolled in their former school. They walked through the gates with new backpacks, stronger legs, and clearer minds. And Chief Tund, he visited often. They took slow walks in her garden, talked about books, his sons in Canada, and the small charity foundation he ran in Lagos. On one of those walks, Amaka paused under the orange tree she once planted with Dare and said, "I never thought I'd smile in this house again." Tund's response was quiet. That's because pain isn't meant to be permanent, just part of the journey. Then, one quiet morning, as Amaka prepared to head to a clinic for a checkup, Madame Reese came to her room. "Madam, the new driver HR recommended. He's waiting in the sitting room." Amaka adjusted her scarf, picked up her crutches, and moved slowly toward the living room. She turned the corner, then froze. Dare, her ex-husband, the man who left her for her best friend, who sold their business, who abandoned her and the girls without a word of real goodbye. He stood by the wall, older, leaner, his once proud shoulders now slouched. A small black bag sat by his feet. His cap dropped from his hands as his eyes met hers. By the time the security guard opened the gate for him, his face had lost all color. Inside, Amaka returned to her living room. Quietly, she sat, eyes blank for a moment, as if processing a dream. Then the sound of tires crunching on gravel pulled her from her thoughts. Tund was back. He stepped out of the car, loosened his tie, and smiled as he saw her on the veranda. "There's my stubborn sunflower," he said with a teasing grin. Amaka smiled back. "You're home early. Your message said we need to talk." So I cleared my schedule. They walked inside together. The girls came bounding down the stairs to hug their stepfather. Laughter returned. The evening passed like any other. Stir-fried rice, stories about school, warm light in the dining room. Later that night, as Tund stepped out of the shower, Amaka sat on the bed brushing her hair. "I have something to tell you," she said gently. He nodded and sat beside her. "The new driver HR hired. He didn't stay. He left the moment he saw me." Tund raised an eyebrow. "Why?" She looked at him. "Because it was Dare." There was a pause. Then Tund reached for her hand. "Thank you for telling me. Are you okay?" She nodded. "I am. It didn't break me. I just needed you to know." He smiled softly. "You are stronger than you think. But if he ever comes back again, just let him go with peace. You owe him nothing but dignity. But please don't deny him access to his children." "I won't," she said. "But he doesn't belong here anymore." Tund pulled her into his arms. "You do." And in that moment, Amaka knew she had not just survived. She had risen. Somewhere in a cramped one-room apartment in K2, Dare sat on a thin mattress, his head bowed over his phone. He stared at a WhatsApp message he had sent earlier. "I'm sorry, Amaka. I was blind. You gave me everything. I gave you pain. Thank you for raising our daughters with grace. One day, I hope they won't be ashamed of their father." No response, just two gray ticks. He knew she had read it, and he knew there would be no reply. Because some doors, once closed, are never meant to be reopened. Some people walk into our lives and become storms. Others arrive like sunlight after rain. Amaka chose peace. She chose healing. She chose to close the door and never reopen it, because some chapters deserve to end, so better ones can begin. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter of hope, heartbreak, and healing. And if you love this, make sure you watch the other life-changing stories waiting for you right here on the channel. Until next time, stay inspired, stay strong, and remember, some doors stay closed for a reason.